Hello guys and welcome back to the channel. I want to do a little video today about perspective of the Battlefield 6 open beta, especially more so on the second weekend. I'm seeing quite a lot of online discourse saying it's now the worst beta we've ever played, and that's kind of a stark contrast to where we were last week. So let's get into it, guys. My thoughts on the second weekend of the open beta. So my first point is on queue times. So this weekend I felt that the queue times have definitely increased quite dramatically. There's been a few times where I've had to kind of cancel queue and then re-queue. This also isn't just with like the custom search that they've added, which kind of brings a whole nother level of issues, I believe. I know it's kind of a quick fix. The community has been very vocal with the requirement for a server browser, and I agree. I think a server browser would be amazing. They have gone for, I think it may have been Ghost Gaming say that it's a Netflix design, which I agree with. It has that familiarity with Netflix. I imagine it's also been made mainly for players with controllers to make it easy for them to navigate, whereas I think a server browser may not be. However, I haven't played a Battlefield game on console for a long time, so I feel like a server browser, I think you just have to get someone in UX and UI to really just pin down on how to make that more accessible for controller players, or at least just provide PC with the option for server browsers. But back to queue times in a second now. So we have experience. I've had a group of playing on my own, playing in threes, playing in fours. The fours, I feel like it definitely took a little bit longer to get us into a game, whereas in the first weekend we were in within seconds. Now, as a point for this video, I haven't looked at the sort of players, how many people are playing at the moment. Don't know whether that number has dropped or increased. So whether that's either hampering the servers in the sense of there isn't enough players looking for games, which I doubt at this point, or the alternative is there's too many players looking for games and the matchmaking's getting a little bit of a tiz and is struggling to actually place people in matches. So there's a potential for either one of those situations to be occurring at this point. DICE, the Battlefield Studio team, potentially it's exactly what a beta is for. Have a look at all of these issues that people are occurring at times. And I did see online that they were linking to SBMM. I guess that comes from, again, Call of Duty, which is a game I don't regularly play. But when you get to a certain level, or even a level, I think it takes a little bit longer for you to get into games because it's trying to find a game with people of your similar skill abilities. Now, I do believe that David Serland has come onto Twitter and said that is not the case. Everything is exactly the same as last weekend. So it may just be a server infrastructure thing that we aren't aware of as the public that's caused that. So that's queue times I wanted to cover. I do believe it has got worse over the 2 weekends. Definitely this weekend I seem to struggle to get into games more so in a group than on my own. However, that just may be, at the times I was playing, the servers may have been getting a lot of traffic and it may have just struggled a little bit. And also, I guess maybe with the custom search that they've brought in, maybe people are looking, for instance, just for the new map on a certain mode that they want to play and give it a try. So that may have whittled down the queue a little bit to make it a little bit more tricky for, you know, people to actually get into games. On that, I want to move on to Rush and Breakthrough. Now, this again is another cause of just negativity online at the moment. And unfortunately, I do have to concur with the majority of people's feelings. I do think that these maps need to be reworked. On a previous video, I very much was looking forward to playing Rush. From how the Conquest game mode worked last week, I was really hoping that the Rush mode had been really pushed. Again, Breakthrough has probably, well, it's been an issue since the open beta has been a thing. And we knew that those maps weren't going to get any updates for, you know, the next weekend. So we weren't expecting too much from, especially like Liberation Peak. Been a real struggle on Breakthrough. I was really hoping that potentially there'd been a little bit more work done on Rush. However, it does not appear to be that way. They are very defense heavy. I feel like when I've played the New York map, I think, again, it's only probably been about 4 rounds. I think I've only seen it complete once, which is cool. The first point is extremely difficult on the New York map, at least when I found with attacking. If you're, again, it comes down to your teammates, all that kind of stuff, not using smokes, blah 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 blah. However, it always seems to be with Rush that first point should always go to the attackers, and then when it gets further down, it then becomes a lot more defense heavy. And I guess maybe that's been a design philosophy that they've changed, that they want to make every point a complete battle and not kind of have this flow of, yeah, okay, the attackers have a little bit of an easier start and it gets worse as it kind of gets on. Maybe that's something that DICE have done as a kind of design philosophy all up. But it just doesn't give as an attacker, once you get stuck into that grind of not being able to get out your spawn point, you're trying different flanking routes, and again, maybe with more map knowledge that will change. You know, the New York map, not many people do go down that right hand side. I think as the night wore on, and I'll go into the early hours of Saturday morning, more people were going down the right. However, there was still a mainstream funnel of down the center and down the left. And again, the defenders do have a lot of kind of real estate to kind of snipe into the spawn points and all this kind of stuff, which again, I've seen a big complaint online. So we do need to have a look at that. I do feel now that will be part of the live service, that they will redo the maps specifically for Breakthrough and Rush. Is that a problem? Maybe not. I feel like when we had 2042 released, the maps just didn't work at all. And, you know, they didn't have the aesthetic feel correct. I do think they've done a lot more correct in this beta. And again, this is the perspective I want to talk to about. Like when we look back to 2042, and maybe it's a bit harsh to keep harping back onto 2042 and how that game released. But I feel like, you know, where we've gone from to where we are now, we've already made leaps and bounds of improvements. And this isn't to kind of chill out to, you know, DICE and Battlefield and EA. It's just what I want us to kind of think about as a community here, because again, we're getting a lot of new players into the game. They want to experience probably different things to kind of what the core Battlefield community would like. You know, these small close quarters maps, I think from when I've seen content from YouTubers that I've watched since Battlefield 3, Battlefield 4, those kind of YouTubers are talking about the large scale maps. They want to see more about the air defenses, or, you know, the air attack, you know, the attack chopper needs balancing, etc. And if I look at more people who have probably done more COD content, where I've kind of watched more Warzone stuff, they're talking about either how good the maps are, or the close quarters, or they just hate the shotgun. And it's a real interesting perspective. Now we're getting a lot of new players into the game. A lot of new content creators have been, I guess, paid to sponsor this game and kind of put content out in there, putting their thoughts towards it. So that is something we have to consider and kind of be mindful of the messages that we are receiving of kind of what that perspective of that player's background. And I'm not saying that we shouldn't listen to players who have maybe played Call of Duty beforehand, or, you know, they may have come from different games completely, like CS. These opinions are definitely valid. Those franchises are massively successful. They've been in a lot better places than Battlefield has been in the past. So we should definitely be listening to people's opinions from Call of Duty and CS2 or CSGO and however, you know, whatever you want to call it from Counter-Strike. But Battlefield has a magic formula that has worked in the past, and we've obviously just haven't rediscovered that for a long time. However, I do feel like Battlefield 6 has started towards that journey of, this is a great Battlefield. Let's go on to weapon balance. So another bit of balance sort of conversation to have here. So weapon balance, now the shotgun is getting a lot of criticism. I made a video on my channel on the first weekend about the M4A1. That gun is unbelievable. I've just seen Jack Fragg's most recent video, and he's talked about how good the M4A1 is. It's absolutely insane. And again, there's this whole talk about the recoil that isn't in the game. And again, another Jack Fragg's video. Sorry for shouting right again, Jack. Hopefully you don't mind. He's done a video on over controller and mouse and keyboard input, and the difference in recoil there. I did notice this weekend when I was playing, I was just happening to have a look at kind of who was killing me at the time. You know, was it mouse and keyboard or controller? And there's a few times, again, with this time to death issue, where it kind of feels like you've just been hit by a truck and it's just someone with an SMG. I did notice that maybe came from more controller players. That might just be my perspective of things and just the narrative I've built up in my mind, that the aim assist and the lack of recoil there is aiding console players. And the obvious thing for me to do there is, if I'm finding that is a problem, I can easily just go then into the crossplay section and just make it for mouse and keyboard only. However, I don't want to do that. I want to see what it's all about and kind of get games with everybody. So I think we have already had the confirmation from DICE that there is a Battlefield weapons balance change that has already happened, that we just couldn't get into this beta. So hopefully the next time we get to play the game, which again I'm hoping we have either another beta weekend or in labs testing, which I hope they open up to more people, for the release of the game, that we then get to test the weapon balance again and see where we're at. Because I feel like there's enough changes there that we need to get more community sentiment on. Because the worry I guess people have is if DICE have played this internally and are having, you know, as all the press releases, loads of fun, blah 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 blah, goes out to the public and everyone's kind of slating the shotguns and all this kind of stuff. So it's one of those, we need to have a little bit more. Again, it's building that trust Battlefield need. They seem to really want to build that trust as well, so I really hope there's another opportunity to play the game. And one of my final kind of topics for overall improvements to beta, or what I've seen people have discourse over, is map size. Again, I don't want to harp on about it, but when we went back to 2042, they were obviously looking to kind of get games of 128 versus 128 people. And the maps were massive, and that was a complaint when 2042 released. I seem to remember that firstly, aesthetically, the maps didn't work too well, and then the size of the maps were just a bit too large, leading to people playing sniper a lot and all this kind of stuff. So I think the Battlefield studios have probably listened to that, and they've shrunk the maps maybe a little too small, especially like Liberation Peak, which is the only map we got to play with the kind of helicopters and planes. And unfortunately, that kind of has missed the mark and has now brought this, I guess, uncertainty about the kind of aircraft and how they will play, which is unfortunate, because that is unfortunate, you know, for myself as a Battlefield player since Battlefield 2, which I've mentioned before. Those are the things that really put Battlefield aside from the Call of Duties and the Medal of Honors of its day, when that was a franchise that was had money behind it. And that's, I guess, from, again, those YouTubers and myself, those are the maps that we wanted to see more of, that blend of all-out warfare. And I know that the kind of all-out warfare has, the mode that they're putting for this open beta has kind of been memed on for that reason, which I don't think, I guess it is fair. However, I guess in terms of where they are in development, they felt most comfortable with these 3 maps, and that's the ones that they wanted to display to the public, and, you know, all power to them. I feel like in the second weekend, it would have been great to get 2 maps, and if that meant rotating one of the other ones out so that we could potentially play a little bit more, let's say brought in New York, and maybe, I think the other version of Cairo has jets and stuff, from what I've seen or what I've heard online, so that would have been cool to probably play, because the Cairo map that we have currently is fantastic. I love it. Obviously it doesn't have the planes and the helicopters, so I feel like we could have potentially had the other Cairo map. And again, maybe DICE haven't done that, maybe just to make sure that people, you know, have played a slightly 3 different biomes, I guess. You know, you kind of got the urban warfare, you got the mountainside stuff, and then you kind of got the other map, which is a small blend of both. Maybe more so towards the Cairo side of things, again, a smaller map. And then they've gone for the New York map, which is, you know, much more close quarters. I did see someone say it felt very much like the BF3 DLC, Close Combat, which was a cool DLC. So I guess that's, I don't understand if that was a negative point, but it was, I love that DLC. We have to have the perspective again of the open beta, where we are. We have come so far with Battlefield 6. When I think back to the test periods for 3, 4, which I was lucky to be a part of, you know, we had the long neck bug, which is classic for Battlefield. We've had people have, you know, really bad netcode, crashes all the time, you know, with Levolution. If the skyscraper went down in Siege of Shanghai, the whole server crashed. You know, I haven't felt this instability that normally comes with Battlefield betas. So I think the fact that a game can complete, for the most part, I had a bug earlier on last night, which was a game which the ticket system didn't decrease. So we played a full 31-minute game on New York, and it was 1,000 out of 1,000. The game ended as a draw, but we played the game out. The flag cap speed was really slow, really weird, and I'm not sure how that happened to a game. It must have been server side, but alas, we move on for those type of bugs. It's one of those things. That's what the open beta is there. I'm sure it's been flagged up as a red sort of error on some sort of data analyst board when he gets back into work on Monday, to be like, this game or several games ended at 1,000 tickets, although it eclipsed for 32 minutes or however long the games allow you to go on for. So it is an interesting beta. I've really enjoyed my time. I have been more frustrated this weekend, I will say. The amount of shotguns that you're encountering, I guess, from a gamer's perspective, in that sense, you know, we had these issues. They were raised kind of last week, I guess, for the open beta weekend 1. you would like to think that changes could happen for the second weekend, but I imagine that these builds, being the fact that they are test builds, had to go through more rigorous testings for the console releases, so they wouldn't even be able to modify those builds, because then they have to go through the entire process with PlayStation and Xbox again, so that they don't kind of brick consoles or anything like that. So I imagine that's the reason why that hasn't changed. One of the other bugs that I've noticed a little bit more this weekend as well is the physics bug. I don't know if that's just because I'm playing a little bit more that New York map, where you kind of just walking across the ground, you get a little hop and the little super jumps. Again, I saw that Jack had pointed out in his video. But it's just one of those things that will be covered by the open beta. Some more data has been found on that. I imagine they'll have more repro steps to kind of fix those bugs as well. But guys, I want to end the video here. I wanted to hear your impressions, your perspective of the open beta. What sort of level of finish were you expecting? Has the open beta felt worse for you in the second weekend? And if you have enjoyed this video, please consider liking and subscribing, dropping comments down in the video. As this is a new channel, it will really help with the engagement and the growth of the channel. Thank you, and see you in the next one.